let's get into the news.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. North and South American, all the ships and clippers at sea. Let's go to press close.
First thing we're going to talk about is an app, or actually more than one app. There's an app that just came out. Yellow and Yangtze has come to mobile and to Steam. If you don't know Yellow and Yangtze, we've talked about it just a little bit. It is a Reiner Knizia game. It is basically a new re-implementation of one of his absolute all-time masterpieces. Jennifer, this is an audio medium. If you want to say it's a horrible game, you could say it. Tigris and Euphrates is the game that this is aping and refreshing.
But it's not a bad game. It's just hard to explain, which is why Yellow and Yangtze is, in my opinion, an improvement because it's much easier to explain the rules.
I totally agree with that. In Tigris and Euphrates, what you're doing is you're expanding your empire and you're battling other empires, and there are internal conflicts and external conflicts, and the way that those are phrased in the book is not great. And listen, I love explaining games. It is a hard game for me to explain.
It's not intuitive in the slightest.
I agree with that. But once you play it, it's like, wow, this is multiplayer chess. This is hardcore.
Right. No, it is. It is a really well-designed games with some very non-intuitive rules. Mm-hmm. And so because I end up teaching a lot myself, then it just becomes, a burden, really.
Yeah.
But Yellow and Yangtze is a great improvement, much easier to explain.
If you have not heard of this game, and it sounds like it might be something interesting to you, listen, it's a very interesting game. It's very good. I like it a lot. The best thing you could do might be to pay $10 and get it on your phone and play it on your phone, learn it on your phone, and then decide whether or not you want it in the physical realm.
Right. No, that is one of the best things about these apps is that you can buy the app much less than the game, figure it out. Maybe this is just best as an app, or hey, my group might really like this. It's an awesome development within the hobby.
Absolutely. And the other thing we need to say is that Terraforming Mars has an app now. I'm not sure if we mentioned that before or not, but we should say that it is out. It is there. It had some bugs. Initially, it wasn't doing so great, but the team there evidently did some incredible coding work and fixed 20 major issues that people were having with it in the span of a week. So if you had gotten Terraforming Mars, the app, and just jumped on it, and you were an early adopter, and it left you wanting, I would say go back to it. Go back to it, check it out, because evidently most of people's concerns with how the implementation was have evaporated in this very, very short period of time between now and then, which is amazing.
Yeah, and awesome and appreciated.
Yeah. Now you've done some consulting work for video game companies, haven't you?
Yes, I've done a lot of playtesting and some of
QA and all that.
Yeah, yeah. Caesar was one of my bigger ones, but yeah, I mean, Alpha Centauri, which I think is the best video game ever.
There you go.
Yeah, it was very cool.
It's fantastic. Next thing, we've been talking about The Crew a bunch. A card game, a trick-taking card game with all kinds of different configurations and rule sets and ways to play it. The Crew Quest for Planet 9. We told you that it was the game that I was most sad for not playing at BGG-Con. It was the game that came in number 1 on one of the Geek Buzz lists from Essen. And we just have word that it is getting... So the one complaint people had about the original game is that the card quality was low. If you've ever played Tichu, you know that no matter how nice those cards are, after you're holding them in your hands for 10 games of it, the flop sweat, the worry, all that sort of stuff, those cards get gummy. Evidently, the cards got pretty bad pretty quickly.
Yuck.
So we have found out that Cosmos, who is going to be putting it out in the United States, is making better quality cards, which means that it's going to take us a little while longer for us to get the game here. But then when we do, it should be a very, very good addition. He said that he's aiming for Q1 2020, but he said that, listen, but that could slip, which to me says it will be firmly in Q2 2020.
Hopefully.
I hope so.
Yeah, I think I think the move, back in the day, you just got whatever the Europeans got, right?
Yep.
And then now, they're almost like a testing. You know what I mean?
Kind of a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, and then, when it comes here, okay, so now the American audience gets an upgraded version. I don't know how Europeans feel about that, but I mean, I've seen this now several times.
What the trend is in games for 20 years now has been to make the games more language independent so they can travel better. And yet, we still are at a point where they're making different editions for the Americans.
Right, I know, right.
Even though the games supposedly should be able to travel very well, they're making very different games for export than they are for domestic market.
Right. It would be interesting to know the size of the hobby in both areas. Is Europeans, I mean, as a group of European countries, are there more European players or are there more American players? Now, we know there's more Americans, but that doesn't necessarily translate in the hobby.
That's a good point. I wonder if the net sales are higher for America versus the entire European Union.
Right.
I wonder. That's a very good question. I'm not really sure. I do know that when I've talked to people over there that they say, look, we originated the hobby, we're way into the hobby, but it's still, even here, it's just a hobby. The best-selling game in Germany is still Monopoly.
Yeah, right.
Sad.
But, that's part of Hasbro's marketing, too. Remember, they have huge amounts of money. I mean, their smallest print run is 200,000.
Ugh.
Right.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. I'm pretty sure that was the print run of The Great Zimbabwe. No, it was not. All right. Next up in game news, we have some news from our friends at Stonemaier Games. The Wingspan European expansion is out. This is basically it is just new cards that introduce the varied birds of Europe. So listen, we didn't talk about it, but Wingspan is kind of America first.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, but I would argue his games aren't, in my opinion, true Euro games.
You are our favorite female gamer, and you're calling it his games? This is Elizabeth Hargrave's game.
No. I'm talking about the owner of the publisher.
Got it.
Yeah.
Jamie Stegmaier.
But he does the publication, which means that he can be assumed to have had some influence in the development.
Sure, of course, yeah. So the expansion is going to include cards for the birds of Europe. It's going to include additional tray for storing the growing collection of birds, eggs, and tokens. I believe there's a new color of egg, purple. We have theorized for a while that the colors of the eggs at a later expansion are going to come into play. In the initial game of Wingspan, they're colored eggs. They're pretty, and they're the colors that bird eggs can sometimes be, but they have no function. So with purple eggs being added, that is adding to the growing speculation that at some point they're going to have a purpose. There's going to be something that they can do. Next up, what do we have here? Oh, Car Wars. Now, you and I are old school. Did you ever play Car Wars back in the day?
Heck yeah. Yeah. I mean, Bruce, my then husband, and his group, we play all the time. And then when Car Wars came to the computer as Auto Duel.
I remember that.
Yeah,
I played Auto Duel all the time. Until I figured out that you can just go to the casino and play poker until you win a huge fortune, buy everything you want. And there was like, I kind of broke the game for myself. That's really unfortunate.
I know, but yeah, so no, we definitely played Car Wars. So it is a welcome sight. I'm looking forward to the implementation.
I'm not going to say I'm looking forward to it. I'm hopeful for the implementation. It has sculpted, painted minis. They look amazing. They look less like Mad Max cars and more like the cars, like the cab from Heavy Metal.
Right, I know, huh? Yeah,
fantastic.
Yeah, it is.
Which is what it should be. So, for those that don't know, Car Wars was a Steve Jackson game. It was back in the 70s. It was very, very popular. We all played it. It was the equivalent of miniatures games before there were,
Yeah. No, well, miniatures board games, miniatures
Correct.
on a board, which
Correct.
was a map, which was paper originally.
It was paper. You would have little paper roads, or you'd have a paper arena set in the near future, sort of set in a Mad Max type world,
Right.
where auto duel is the favorite spectator sport, where people basically go into demolition derbies. Only they have cars loaded with rocket launchers and machine guns and things like that. A really fun setting, a really wonderful, a wonderful world. Kind of a fun game. I don't think the gameplay ages well at all.
Well,
It's a-
we'll see what he does with it. I mean,
We will.
You see what I'm saying?
No, yeah.
Because it could age well if he'll do something with it. But, he has moved in a totally different direction.
Yeah, I agree.
So
I
we
agree.
don't know what's going to happen here.
Fair enough. I will say that there is a game that is out there right now called Gaslands. Gaslands is very good. It is a sort of role-playing / miniatures game that you play with Hot Wheels. You get Hot Wheels or Matchbox cars, and you can play the game. The rules are what we wished Car Wars would be.
Right.
So with this new game coming out, listen, you can have all the beautiful minis and great production values in the world, but if your gameplay doesn't match what Gaslands has done, guess
Right.
what? You're gonna be in trouble. At least in my book.
Well, the other thing is, too, we have to understand that there are various factions of the hobby.
Sure.
Now, we don't know what factions are actually profitable, but there are certainly various factions who might still love that old school style.
Sure. Well, yeah. I mean, in the RPG world, it's OSR is the terminology for that. It's the old school Renaissance. Those are the people that don't want to play the newfangled role-playing games. They want to play Dungeons and Dragons. They don't want to play Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. They want to go back and play. They want to go back and play AD&D. They want to play the Dungeon Call Classics. Puts out all of these classic style adventures. It's nostalgia. As long as they're not denigrating what other people like in order for them to do. Like, if that's what you love and you want to go back and have those experiences again,
right?
More power to you. I love doing that. I enjoy that, but I also love the modern story game and where we've gone.
I like new stuff. This house is brand new.
Yeah,
I
beautiful, by the way. I really like this place.
Thank you. I just like new. I have a MBA in technology, and I'm all for the new stuff.
So we have 23 days as of this recording to go on the Kickstarter for the Car Wars edition. It has kicked. It has kicked. It's at about $500,000 right now.
See what I'm saying?
$75 is going to get you the 4-player game. This is interesting. I haven't seen this before. I don't really like this. They've done something different with their Kickstarter. What they've done is the level at which you pledge unlocks only some of the add-ons.
But that's so Steve Jackson.
It is so Steve Jackson. It's like, dude, just come on. It's not 1978. You can't just, you put out a zine and charge us $10 for it.
I know, exactly.
Basically. So unfortunately, it's one of those things where you have to read the fine print if you back this game. Check and see whether or not your stretch goals for that particular backing level are rookie, ace, or double ace. Because you're only going to get some things in one versus the other. I don't like that. That feels a little...
But they're upfront about it. As long as they're upfront about it, if people want to do that...
Sort of. It's in there, but...
Oh, but it's not that obvious, you're
saying. No.
Because I haven't seen the page.
No, but you have to study it. I mean, it's definitely in there, but you have to look it over. It feels a little multi-level marketing to me. It feels a little Amway. But what can you do? That's good for you, Steve. Steve, I've played your games in a time when there weren't other options, and I was very happy to. So you will have my undying loyalty for that alone. Speaking of role-playing games, since it is the Christmas season, I just want to talk for 1 minute about the best role-playing game of the year. It won the Emmy at Gen Con for best role-playing game of the year. It is a game called Mothership. I may have mentioned it briefly before. What it is sci-fi horror role-playing. Think Alien.
Really?
Yes. And it is wonderful. It is, when I talked about old school Renaissance, the people like those old school experiences, it plays like Traveler. It feels like that a little bit. But it also it plays very well for the story gamers. It's kind of a perfect bridge. People are going nuts for this game. You can only play one of four classes of people. You're either Teamsters, you're the rough and tumble workers, right? You play scientists. You play androids, which are powerful, they're fast, and all that sort of stuff, but they can unnerve the rest of the rest of the crew. And then there are the Marines who shoot bubblegum and shoot aliens.
Rules easy.
It is not. Yeah, it's pretty rules easy. It's pretty. I wish I could show you a character sheet because it's really interesting. The character sheet, the right side of the character sheet is a tech tree where you're choosing your skills. So it's got the left column is the basic level skills, and then the next one is the more expert, and then there's mastery, and you're choosing that out. It's also a little Call of Cthulhu. It's basically Traveler meets Call of Cthulhu because you have a terror level, a panic level that is constantly rising, and the game puts you to very bad decisions all the time. Where I find something out in this part of the ship, and I know that this needs to be dealt with, but I can't deal with it. And the person who should deal with it is the Marine. But if I tell the Marine what's in there, he's not going to go there. So I'm going to lie to him. So I'm going to lie to him about what's in there. Right. So he's going to go and save the ship. It creates these wonderful situations.
Yeah, it sounds great.
And there are a whole bunch of short scenarios that various people have been creating.
Now, is it on paper, online?
Yes, paper.
It's paper.
You can go to DriveThruRPG, and it is pay.
Oh, I know that site. Yeah.
It's pay what you want. Pay what you want for the base game, and then I think it's $7 for that. They are kickstarting a new expansion book for it.
Okay, great.
Right now, so you can go there and check that out. But if it sounds like it's something that you're into and you're into RPGs, I highly recommend you check out.
Yeah, I've been thinking about getting back into RPGs.
Well, you're retired. You can.
Yeah, I'm actually disabled.
Yeah, well.
I'm not. Technically, I haven't retired, but I've been thinking about it, and that sounds like a really good fit. Bruce would just love it, you know what I mean? And it sounds also a little Gloomhaven-ish.
A little bit. I think it really is.
Yeah, in the style, not the scenarios. Sure. But I'm just saying in the limited number of characters, in the shortness of the scenarios. I think that was a big draw with Gloomhaven.
Sure.
Is that you don't have these big old, adventure books and 6 years later you're just now finishing.
Right.
And so that seems to be much more tuned to today's gamer.
Listen, pay your own price.
You can't argue with that.
They suggest paying $7, but you could.
I would pay them the $7.
I would pay. I highly recommend you do that. Nobody is getting rich in the
These are
indie role playing game space.
Exactly.
Feed these guys so that they can turn out more great stuff. That's what I would say.
That's me.
A little bit of fun news here. A little bit of good news, I should say. Card and board games have been shown to ward off cognitive decline. This is a study that came out a couple weeks ago that shows people who played games as they got older had less decline in their mental skills in their 70s. It is a early study, so it is not. It's not separating causation from from coincidence and all that sort of stuff. But the journals of gerontology reported this. And they say that it is looking very, very promising, that probably more than most other activities, even more than doing puzzles and things like that. They're saying that playing board, card, and word games is very protective. I talked to my doctor about this because I was asking him about that, and he said that something very interesting. We're not giving out medical advice, but he said that when it comes to the brain, there are two parts to the equation. One is vascular. Right. So get your health up, walk, you know,
Right.
eat right,
well,
eat right, because the blood going through that brain is feeding that brain. That is one of the main things that you can do for brain health. So it is physical. But the other thing is the rewiring of the brain.
Right.
And that's where things like this come in, which means that your brain is dying. Your brain is, bad things are happening to your brain as you age. But if you are working that brain, you're cutting new pathways. So you're basically rerouting the things that you need from the areas that are not doing well to areas that are still doing well.
Yeah, well, you know, that has been shown many times with stroke victims. They lose half of their, you know, the usability of one side, and the brain creates new paths for the one hand, for example, to be both-handed. So, yeah, you know, but I don't know. I mean, and we'll get into this later about me personally. But
Yeah, I mean, obviously you're showing a lot of cognitive decline, but...
Yeah, I know, man. Gosh.
And last but not least, sorry to end on a sad note, but or not a sad note, but a little difficult topic. We mentioned a few episodes ago about Survivor, about how there was a player on Survivor that was that one of the contestants said was sexually harassing her. That was inappropriate touching and all that sort of stuff. Two other women on the show then started to lob their own claims about that, only to retract them later on and say that they were just doing it to get an in-game advantage, which is pretty awful. And then sure enough, what happens is the girl who reported, the woman who reported the sexual harassment was voted off the show, and the harasser stayed on. Despite there being video evidence, and they, you know, even in the episode, they had one of those rare moments where you hear the producer talking and giving the guy a warning, saying, "No more, no more, no more." Dan Spillo, the contestant, has been removed. He's been removed from the show. It was an incident involving a member of the crew, not a member of the cast. We have no idea about the details. Right. But this is 4 days from the end of the show, so he was getting right down into the money round. Right. And generally, when you're pulled off the show in this situation, you are added to the show's jury. He is not added to the jury. He is simply taken out. I opined that something should have been done right away, that in a game where there are alliances and deals and things to be made, people's safety can never be compromised, and sexual harassment is never something that you can allow to become gamified. And unfortunately it did. So sad that it went down the way that it did, but happy that it seems like hopefully this will be resolved. It's created some interesting things. The ending episode of Every Survivor has been a live episode. This one will not be. This one will be pre-taped. They are worried about they're worried about what people are going to say. They're worried about what people are going to do. One guy who I do not trust at all, but was a guy in a previous Survivor who was taken off of the show because he was denigrating a trans person on the show. He was talking about how he believes that all of these cast members, that they're going to be rallying to this person who was removed, to his side. I don't know if that's true or not. I doubt it.
I don't, you know Hollywood much better.
Don't. This is everywhere. This is everywhere.
But okay, I will say this.
Okay.
When I was, we were going to have kids or whatever, I didn't want them to be in, if I had a girl, I didn't want her in Hollywood.
Fair.
Because it feels like, I'm telling you,
Sure.
that Hollywood has a much bigger Me Too problem than other places. Not to say that other places don't have them. I've been a victim of Me Too several times, but not to the extent that it appears that Hollywood has.
I believe, I don't know if that's true. I will say this. I will say that because it's Hollywood, everything's on Front Street. Right? Everything is out there. People are going to have a microphone in their face, and they're going to be able to say things, and it's going to be broadcast to a larger audience.
Right.
My friends that work in the finance industry would say that I don't think it's as bad. Right?
No, well, yes. Okay. So, yeah. I mean, right. Finance is terrible.
I think that there are a lot of places where it is terrible. My guess is that the places that you think are the safest right now are probably the worst, because it more likely means that those are the places where it is still closeted
a problem
and tolerated.
Yeah, the bottom line is, though, which is really good, is that we got a ruling that said that employers are responsible for hostile work environment.
Exactly.
And because of that, a lot of this, not all of it, but a lot of this has gone down.
Yep.
Because companies do not like paying out $5 million because their jerk, manager can't keep his hands to himself.
Look, when Me Too started happening, there were a bunch of, people that were like, oh no, what is this going to mean? Like, I'm like, I have a daughter and I have a son. I know guys that were complaining that, now my son is going to live in a dangerous world where anyone can accuse him of anything and he's just going to be destroyed. And I'm like, no, you know what? I don't buy that at all. I'm so happy that my daughter has a chance. I hope to live in a radically different world that is different than what you had to go through. Yeah. I'm hoping that she doesn't have to go through that.
Well, you know what? Why don't you have them model what women do, right? Do women walk up to men and rub them on the neck? Do women hug men? Model what women do.
There you go.
And they're telling you what they want done to them.
Yep.
Okay? And I don't think enough men get that part.
We're starting to.
Yeah, but it's part of, in my opinion, the entitlement of the American man. Yeah. Is that, I'm entitled. And you're like, no. I have not given you permission to touch me in any place. I have not given you permission to call me baby or sweetie, And do I call you baby? Do I call you sweetie? I don't do that. So just act like I do. And it's simple.
Totally agree. Thank you, baby.
Stop that.
Sorry. Thank you, Jennifer. That was awesome. That was our game news.